Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Like me, I'm sure many of you love a fantastic looking table for your games of Warhammer The Old World, but it's an awful lot of work sometimes to paint and build and put it all together. Mantic Games have brought out a Fantasy Battlefield Pack and they've sent it to me to have a look at. So let's find out if this is a really cheap and effective way of getting terrain on the table.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
So this little box is quite interesting. The hills were the first things I saw. They popped up on my Facebook feed the other day and I shared it in the channel's Discord. Go and join the Discord, there's a link in the video description, by the way. And I thought they were pretty cool. They looked a very, very good price, and that's definitely what piqued my interest. And then later that day, or maybe the next day, I can't remember, Mantic Games reached out and got in touch and said, would you like to review a set on the channel? And that's what I'm going to do today. So let's start on the Mantic Games website. It's something I don't go to very often because I don't play the Kings of War game. I'm so focused on Warhammer The Old World, but I know a lot of people use their miniatures for alternative things, and an awful lot of people love and play Kings of War, and I will definitely give it a go at some point. But this is the set. It's £80 and you get quite a lot in it. So we'll skip past the little artistic shot there, but this essentially is the selection of the stuff that you get in the box as a whole for your £80. So this is what you get, a full table's worth of terrain, maybe two, which is what I thought when I first saw it, and I'll try to remember to come back to that later on. Here's a picture of it on a mat, not included. There are some bundles with mats included coming soon, and I think they're around the £140, £145 mark then, for all in everything you'd need to play a game of fantasy related stuff, which I think is pretty good if you're looking to get started. And you have your cardboard buildings that are pre-coloured. It is thick card, as we'll see in a moment. A set of mouse pad neoprene templates to go on your table. 3 as wood bases, and then there's 3 other, there's sort of area terrain of some kind, and you get a couple of hills with flat tops as well. And these, like I said in the little intro, are the things that originally drew me in to looking at this product. But let's have a look at the actual product and stop banging around on their website. So you got this nice colourful box, as you've already seen. And this is what I was faced with when I first opened it up. All individually packaged. You've got your little neoprene terrain sections there. You've got your wall sections, which come in a little bag. It's a plastic material. These they weren't what I was expecting, but now thinking about the price, it makes a lot of sense. These are they're vacuum formed. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about each of these sets in detail at the moment. But you know, size wise, they're medium size, not too bad at all. We move on to trees in bags. Again, same plastic as the wall. 3 little sets of those. Another bag of walls, so you've got basically 2 sets of identical walls there, and then you move on to the buildings that are in the bottom of the box. A full colour assembly guide, which, as you'll see in a moment, is very, very easy to follow, and then the large sort of bundle of card buildings in the bottom, which is quite thick cardstock. So let's start with the neoprene area terrain or difficult terrain set. I'm not a huge fan of flat terrain, but I don't mind it as a base for other terrain to go on, if that makes sense. Then you remove terrain should you need to move a building through. That way you give yourself all the accuracy you might need during the game, but it looks a little bit literally flat otherwise. But they look nice. The products are good quality prints, well made neoprene, blah blah blah. They don't excite me too much. And then we have the wood bases, which is more of the same, and this makes a little bit more sense to me because we've got trees in the box and the trees can go on it. And like I've already mentioned, that I've got no problem with neoprene being used as the area map for some terrain to go on top. And I've already cut up some old mats that I have that are kind of a bit stained or out of shape and turned them into bases for woods that I use as well. So I've already got something like this that I made myself, and these just look cool. They're nice designs on them, and once you put all the trees on them, you get the idea of how they'll work. The trees that you get in this set are actually quite small, but I'm guessing with them being without any foliage, if you add that on, it adds quite a lot of bulk. You do get a little optional little face to go on one of the trees in each set if you wanted to go down that more whimsical route. So on to the wall, same material as the trees. It is quite a soft, bendy plastic. With hot water, I thought that will go back, but it turned out that they just bend back by themselves anyway. I'm guessing it's the same material that you get in the terrain coat stuff. So it's for terrain, it's going to be pretty flexible. Shouldn't snap, which is really, really good, especially if you're using a club play. You get a few different sections of walls. You got little buttresses that you can use at the end. They don't stand up on their own. So you've got to choose where you glue them. It's pretty easy to clean up. Don't obviously use your blade like you just saw me doing there, cutting towards you. Cut away from yourself always. But there's enough stuff in there. They cover quite a large area if you want them to. Very practical. I wish there was maybe another 2 or 3 of the little end buttresses so you could stick it on one of the end of each strips to give yourself the flexibility that was. As you can see here, it just bends back by itself. In fact, when I primed them in my garden yesterday, it was about 15 degrees, but the sun was out, and the sun just made them flatten out by themselves, so no hot water was needed in the end. I don't know why I was surprised that these were vacuum formed plastic. I should have guessed by the price. They're not the same hard plastic as the Games Workshop Citadel Hills. Obviously, sorry about the Space Wolf Bloodclaw there. He was all I had on my desk at the time to give you an idea of scale. They are perfectly fine. Obviously, if you stand on them or lean on them too hard, they are likely to break. Whereas the Citadel hard plastic hills are really, really, really super strong. But these are perfectly usable. And what I'm going to do now is show you how quickly and easily you can paint them. It's a bit of a tutorial, but I'm going to whiz through it. Any of the paints I use, I will hold up the camera if you want to copy along, and then I'll try and remember to pop them up on my Patreon. I usually put up an image with all the paints used for each painting project that even free members can have a look at. If you don't have to join, you can just pause the video if you want to copy the painting. But anyway, I digress. Primed black, had no issues getting black paint on any of the plastic elements in this set, and I'm just using a brown base for everything, but making sure it's a fairly thin coat, so a little bit of the shadow is showing through from that black prime. So almost zenithal-esque, just not too worried about a little bit of black showing through because it really aids the shadows later on. Pretty rough and ready paint job overall, to be honest with you here. Making sure that the brown goes over everything, even the areas that are going to be stone. That can be the dirt that's in between the mortar. Not that there would be mortar on this, but I think is a flint style effect or a slate wall. And then I've just started layering up with lighter browns, building almost zenithal style highlights in, again, rough and ready, trying to do this really, really quickly. And I painted all of the hills and all the walls and trees in this set in about 2 hours. Didn't take me too long at all. The detail is quite shallow on the hills, it being the vacuum form, so you don't have any really strong edges. So I wanted to avoid dry brushing, otherwise you'd get a very sort of streaky effect on there. So I'm adding my light with the airbrushing here really, and trying to place the hill at an angle and trying to catch that with a bit of overspray so you get a bit of shadow showing through, because I was a little bit concerned that if I start dry brushing over the top of these, then it's just going to look a little bit scruffy and messy. Pushing the highlights quite high because I'm going to be using some oil washes to knock them back a little bit, and very much focusing here on the ends of the branches and things like that to really pick out where the light would shine. But again, not stressing about it, whizzing through really, really quickly with my airbrush and just sitting there with everything in a big pile on my desk at the moment. Picking up one bit and moving on to the next pretty quickly, focusing there on the tree stump with a little bit lighter colour in the middle to make it look like where the bark isn't showing. Again, quite simple highlights there on the wooden areas of the fence, not worrying if there's a tiny bit of overspray onto the slate wall areas, and that same method again for the hills, focusing more towards the edges here, or the top parts, trying to catch a little bit of the edges, a little bit of the detail, but leaving the bit of the previous tones still showing, so you've got that build up of light and trying to catch as much of that slightly shallow detail as there is. For the greys, on the slate walls, I've just turned to some dry brushing or over brushing here really. I'm keeping quite a lot of paint on my dry brush, and I'm just brushing one angle, trying to catch quite a lot of the top of each bit of slate. Again, the detail's not super strong on these walls. They're very much functional terrain pieces. They're not highly detailed. Each bit of slate is very, very small. You're not going to get the benefits from it anyway. Building up to a lighter grey now and just focusing towards the top half of the walls, catching that and giving it a bit of a two-tone grey effect. A bit more dry brushing than over brushing for this stage, just trying to catch the edges of those sort of slaty, flinty bits at the top as much as I possibly can. There is a little bit of detail on the wall as well, some vines and things growing up, what could be bush or hedge down the bottom. I'm actually deliberately catching this with a little bit of the lighter grey when I can as well, because I'm going to add a little bit of contrast style paint, in fact Army Painter speed paint, in a moment, and that will really pick up the detail. A little more dry brushing now, but returning to the brown areas, the wooden areas, just picking out a little bit of detail. There is wood grain detail on the gates, and there's a couple of these in the pack as well. And then moving over to all of the trees and the tree stumps as well, just trying to catch a little bit of the detail. Again, the detail's not super strong. They are quite basic sculpts, but there is enough detail to catch a little bit of it here, which will really benefit if you're going to be glazing over the top of it, adding washes, anything like that. And then the oil washes will really benefit from what I'm doing here. The only other colour I used was a little bit of metallic paint just to pick out the hinges of the gate and a couple of the bolts that are there. It's quite a bright silver I've gone for. These will be quite rusty, but I'm going to be using a brown oil wash over the top, which tones it right down. And then I'm using a little bit of a contrast speed paint through my airbrush here. You could just paint this on with a brush as well, but I just found that it sped things up a little bit, and I'm focusing on the bottom areas of all of the trees, almost painting on or spraying on it as a wash just to really soak in and change the tone, and also along the bottom of the walls as well, catching those sort of growing bushes and little vines and things. And this is a kind of a yellowy green colour, so it tones that brown nicely and just sort of tones the bottom half of the wall, makes it look like there's a little bit of rising damp or water on there, and just adds a little bit of extra colour. And once this is on there, it kind of finishes it off quite nicely. You could just leave it there. The same with the hills. I decided to sort of spray into some of the deeper cracks and crevices that are on the hills as well. And then also all the way around the edges of the hill, really adding some sort of depth to the shadow, and the hills really benefit from this the most. They're definitely my favourite part of this kit, so I think they look pretty cool in the end once all the work is done on them. And this is very much optional, but just playing around, taking a little bit more care here and going really lightly with the airbrush, and you're able to painting quite neat little lines on the veins of detail that are showing on the rock here, just adding a little bit of shadow in there as well, and it really starts to make it pop and stand out actually. I decided to return to the trees as well, and rather than just the base area, add some of this colour into some of the darker recesses of the tree branches, and it really just adds a little bit more punch to it overall if you're able to vary the darkest and the lightest tones. Next stage was to give it a little bit of a varnish to protect it from the oil paints that I'm going to pop on in a moment. I've gone for semi-gloss because the gloss gives it a little bit more protection, but a full gloss sometimes can be quite hard to matte back down again if it gets too much in the recesses, and this is what I had. I had and grabbed it, and it worked out fine, but just covering everything just to give it a bit more protection for when I slop it in oil paints in a moment, especially the hills, because the hills are quite flexible with that kind of vacuum formed plastic, and I was concerned that we might have some cracking of paint if they get lent on or moved a little bit during storage, so I wanted to make sure there was a good layer of varnish on there to protect them. The hills have a little plain lip on them at the bottom from the casting process, the vacuum forming process, I'm guessing. So just adding a little bit of basing texture around the edge just to make it look a little bit less plastic and a little bit more natural. And then after that, once it's all dry, you can start using oil washes. I'm using a pre-mixed sort of mud brown oil wash here, and essentially slapping it over everything, allowing it to run down into all the recesses. If you've not used oil paints before, they're very cool, very easy to use. I talk about this a lot in my videos, so excuse all the regular listeners who have heard this spiel before. I tend to use these more now in place of your standard washes, like your Agrex Earthshades and your non-oils and things like that. You want to make sure you're using an older brush. They can affect the paintwork that you've put down before, hence the varnishing beforehand. But it runs into all the recesses really nicely, so it shades. When it dries very matte in most cases, and actually looks like dirt in all the crevices. But the good thing is it doesn't pool on the flat surfaces like traditional washes do. So as the thinner that's in there evaporates, you get this really, really lovely effect that doesn't have any of that ugly streaking on. And the best part, and I didn't need to do it in this, but the best part is you can go back with a little bit of artist thinner as well and clean away any areas that you don't want the oil paint to be. Again, you want to make sure you have a good varnish before you're doing that, because you start scrubbing at your paint job with essentially thinners, you can remove it back to the primer, or even worse, the plastic. But they give such a lovely effect that they're well worth trying out if you've not attempted it already. So while those oil paints are drying and they can take a little while to set, I'm going to build all of the card buildings. I was concerned that they might be too thin a card when I realised they weren't MDF pre-coloured buildings, but this is really, really thick cardstock, really, really thick, almost akin to the original Citadel stuff that we saw in like 4th edition, maybe thicker, to be honest with you. And they pop together super, super easy. You definitely would want to glue these if you were building them for yourself and you want to keep using them. There are bits that just don't stay together just by clipping it together. The main bodies of the buildings do, not too bad, but they don't stick to the bases. The little window bits can fall off as well. You definitely want to glue them. The reason I'm not gluing because I'm going to be giving these away to my patrons. A little bit more about that later on, but they are super, super easy to build. I think it took me about 5 minutes to do each building, next to no time at all. They're very, very simple designs, really. I really like the artwork for this first building. The artwork's good quality on all of them, but this is my favorite building. Looks pretty cool. The little farmhouse building reminds me a little bit of the Forge World farmhouse, if anyone remembers that. Very, very fun as well. I wonder if the inspiration came from that. Not so much a fan of the town hall building. I'm not sure what it is. A little bit sort of, I don't know, cartoony, high D&D-esque movie style fantasy. Not super the thing that I normally go for, not grim dark enough. Artwork's great. Not a fan of the flag either. I think that looks a little bit tacky. But again, it does the job that it should be doing. And here it is all set up on the table and time to share my overall thoughts. The plastic terrain, the walls and the trees, they are quite small and they are quite basic, but they're absolutely fine. And once painted up, they're very, very nice, to be honest with you. And I'll definitely be keeping those and using them in my collection. Likewise, the hills, they are that softer vacuum back plastic. You can buy them in sets of 2 for £18. So that's really cheap for pre-made hills, to be honest with you. And I think that needs to be reflected when you're thinking about the quality of them. They are absolutely fine. I love the way they've painted up. I've deliberately left them without grass on for a reason. I'll show you that a little bit more in a few minutes' time. But I'm really happy with them. I think the neoprene mats for the woods are really good as well. Very functional and very good for most game systems when you need to know the terrain layout. The completely flat terrain in terms of the cornfield and stuff, not really for me, but I know a lot of people like to game that way, and that's absolutely fine. This is perfect for clubs and things to buy, or if you're putting on an event, because I think that one of these sets can almost do 2 tables if you're playing Warhammer The Old World, if you're going for that 6 pieces of terrain. It's not the way I like to do it, but if you're looking to build up something for an event, maybe adding something else to it, you could probably make 2 tables out of this, or at least 2 tables out of 3 sets or something like that, which starts to make it quite affordable. There's club bundles as well. I'm not a huge fan of the buildings, but they are a very, very good temporary solution. Definitely, if you're starting new in a game and you want terrain straight away, this is really good value to get you started. And you may want to replace those buildings in the future once you've had more time to buy something and paint something a little bit more permanent, be that a plastic kit or something that's 3D printed. And there's a lot of amazing 3D printed stuff out there, but then I'm not a huge fan of the buildings from that sense, but they're also great value and clearly do what they're designed to do. All in all, I think it's a really good value set, and in no time at all, you've got a full table's worth of terrain. And I think that's what it's strengthened and what it's aimed at. It's probably not aimed at veteran gamers who have money to spend on really, really nice high-end stuff. This is a way of getting your table filled quite quickly, and maybe over time, like I suggested, you'd replace things like the buildings. Nothing's bad here. The buildings aren't bad. They're just not to my taste, so to speak. But there's some really good bits, and I think the hills, while they're a little bit flexible, look really good once they're painted up. And like I said, I'll be keeping them in my collection and using them moving forward. Same with the trees as well, are always useful to have. And you can see why I've painted them the way I have, because I'm going to be using them in my Badlands or deserty style terrain sets. And they are now added to my collection because I think they're great. And I definitely encourage people to look at buying the individual sets, because you can buy these by themselves if you decide not to go and say buy the full set. So the bits I don't like as much are the ones you see in shot layout, and it's just because of the experience I have as a gamer and the collection of terrain that I already have. I don't need this stuff, but for some people this would be absolutely brilliant, and I will be giving it away each month on my Patreon. I give away things, and this will form part of June's Patreon giveaway, no doubt. So look out for that then. If you're a member of the Patreon, you may be in a chance to win these bits that I'm not going to use. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much again to Mantic and to Alex for reaching out and sending me that set. I've had loads of fun putting this video together and sharing my thoughts with you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the set. Is it something you'll be picking up, or will you be picking up individual elements of the set as well? Like I already mentioned just at the end there, I will be giving away the bits that I'm not using on my Patreon. I do a monthly Patreon giveaway each month. That everyone who's joined, you can be free members or paid members, and I put your names into a hat and I draw someone randomly. So those buildings and those few mousepad terrain bits will be on the way out to someone next month. And Patreon really is the best way you can support me on the channel. I love to cover a wide range of games on the channel, especially painting tutorials, which take a long time to film and then edit afterwards. So any help that you can give me financially is really appreciated. And thank you to all my existing patrons for all the support that you give me. I want to keep the channel going with lots and lots of different varied videos. It's very hard to do in the current climate on YouTube with the algorithm. It really wants you to put out a single topic week on, week out at the same date. So when I move from Warhammer The Old World to a bit of bolt action or something like that, it really doesn't like it very much. And I know that many of you who are subscribers and viewers of the channel who make it this far in videos like lots of different things. So your support is greatly appreciated. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I really do genuinely appreciate it. Check out the channel sponsor as well, Counterattack Bases. But take care, and I'll catch you soon.